Here. Hey guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Jeff Coffman. I'm joined by Mr. Ken Rossics, my partner and colleague over at Sub2 Empire. And Ken, what do we got going on today?
Well, thank everyone so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. And as Jeff mentioned, we've had some technical issues. We are revamping and relaunching our podcast, going to be known as the Creative Real Estate Investing Mastery Podcast. So we wanted to just reset things for everyone and like who the hell are these Sub 2 Empire guys and all of that. So Jeff, well, let's just start out by saying who is Jeff Kaufman? How did you get started in real estate? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, man, I how much time you got today? I'm
About
gonna
a
do my
45
favorite
minute
thing.
podcast, Jeff. About a 45-minute
Yeah,
podcast.
it's everybody's favorite thing to talk about themselves, right? Now, so essentially for me, I just got started. I actually really started back in like 1996, believe it or not. Now I took a little hiatus. By little, I mean about 20 years ish, something like that. No, but I started with the old, staying up too late one night, probably drinking a little too much sauce, and ordering the Carlton Sheets no money down real estate course. I think it's probably the most influential uh, course of any course of all time. I think that's probably where at least my generation
Yeah.
got the idea that
Yeah.
they could actually go out and buy properties and especially do it with no money out of their pocket. So it was very intriguing. But essentially, 1996, Carlton Sheets is where really started to develop this interest in real estate. And so, uh, like I said, I shelved that whole idea. Uh, Kind of moved on with my life, chased money around from job to job to job. Probably, I don't know, I haven't really counted, but maybe 6 to 8 different jobs. And by the time it was all said and done, I was making over 6 figures at the time. And but as my wife can tell you, and probably my kids could tell you as well, I was not fun to be around. I would wake up every morning. I would I'm a little embarrassed to say this. I'd be yelling at everybody in the house. I just hated my job. I hated it. I hated, and maybe it even wasn't necessarily the job that I hated. I just hated the fact that I had to get up and go to work and spend my time on someone else's dime. You know what I mean? Like it's just wasn't fun. And so I got really, really bitter, got really sick of it, and unfortunately, the people around me paid for it. So fast forward to 2015, I just decided like one day home, I was coming home from work and I saw this house on the side of the road, off the side of the highway. It was kind of set back off, and I stopped and I walked around. It was clearly vacant. I wasn't going to just walk up on somebody's property, but I just stopped and I looked at that house. I walked around it and I just thought, man, I've got to make a change. And so that's what I did. I decided that very day that I was going to go out and I was going to seek out a coach and a mentor, someone to kind of show me the ropes with the on the investment side. I knew I didn't want to be an agent. I'm not really interested in that, and I'm still not interested in that. But that day in 2015, it was December of 2015. That day, I made up my mind, and so that's what I did. I committed to spending a boatload of money. I'm talking. It was terrifying, honestly, to be really honest with you. But I just did it. I just jumped in, and probably spent, I don't know, the next 3 to 4 months really just kind of soaking in some things and trying to get things figured out. I was terrified to make an offer on anything, and I actually that's really where I started to develop my marketing skills early on, and I have become a big fan of marketing. I have realized what all the gurus talk about, which is you're not really a real estate investor, you're a marketer first, and I really adopted that, and so it was February, I believe it was February of 2016. I had fired up my marketing engine. I was using Google Ads at the time, and which, by the way, is still a really fantastic resource. Um, but I got I had my phone on my back in my back pocket, and it dinged, and it showed me that I had a new lead. And ironically enough, the night before is when I went and had my ads go live, and so that was on a Sunday morning. Sunday night, I had my very first property under contract, and
So
I was
Jeff, I'm
terrified.
sorry. Can you
Yeah,
hear me, Jeff?
I can hear you.
Um, so you're gonna hate what I'm about to tell you, but
Uh
I'm
oh.
out. I'm not being recorded anymore. My browser is out of storage, so I guess that answers the question about using a different
Oh,
browser.
okay.
Um,
Okay, so guys, I'm still being recorded here. I'm sitting here telling you my story. I didn't kick Ken off of the podcast, but Ken's going to have to uh, pull up another browser, I suppose. Um, I can see him, but you guys can't see him. So again, more technical issues. I apologize about that. So Ken, if you wanna go ahead and Ken, can you still hear me? By the way.
I can still hear and see you. Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So he just jumped off. So anyway, I'm just going to continue on with the story. So I had that lead, and I went and had that property under contract, first property that I had, and I ended up closing that deal just to kind of shorten things up and make it short and sweet. I ended up closing that deal, and again, I was working a W-2 job, but at the closing table, I walked away with a check for $41,000, and I bought that property subject to, and so it was a really, really interesting time uh, because while I was going through that, while I was going through that whole process of closing on that deal, I got another lead, and on this lead, this guy, welcome back, Ken.
Good to be back. Just a couple of real guys with real technical issues, by the way.
Yeah,
So sorry about that.
yeah. We like to say Ken's our technologically challenged member.
Yes,
No,
I'm waiting for it to make my life easier, actually, right?
yeah. At some
My
point,
kingdom for any piece of technology to actually make my life easier instead of more complicated and
you would
frustrating.
think you would think that that'd be the goal, right?
Right.
So anyway, yeah, I ended up getting another lead on another property while this one was going through closing, and uh, that house I literally had given to me. I didn't put any earnest money down. I also bought it subject to. I was making a ton of mistakes, um, and the reason that it wasn't like I chose subject to as a way to acquire these properties. It was more of I had $0 to like I had no money in savings. I had nothing. I mean, just came off of a divorce a few years earlier, and I had excellent credit. I had like an 830 credit score, but I didn't have any money to spend, So and in my mind, I was thinking, well, if I'm going to get into real estate, how am I going to come up with these down payments? Like, just totally green, totally new and fresh into the business. So subject to ended up being my answer to that. And just to kind of end it all or wrap this up, at the end of that first year in this business, I actually made more money. And remember, I was making six figures. I made more money in the first 3 months. Well, I'll say 6 months because we had some closings there. I made more money in the first 6 months than I had made all year long in my job. And uh, after the third deal, the third deal was also a subject to deal because I was pretty much hooked at that point. Who wouldn't be? And after that third deal, I just like, all right, well, the proof is in the pudding. Like this works. I've done it. Uh, I actually had to walk. I had to walk some title companies through closing subject to deals because we actually walked. I'm not going to take the credit for it. I'll say that we walked together through these deals because they were really unfamiliar with how this all worked and everything. And luckily we were able to get those accomplished. And here I am, 10 years later, still rocking the subject to deals, man. they just keep rolling. And um, I had a little bit of a setback there. We could probably talk about that at some point.
That's a
Ken,
whole
Ken,
separate
Ken,
podcast episode, I think, probably, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
the stupid shit we've done, or bad mistakes we've made, or whatever the title of that
yeah,
podcast is. But yeah, that'll definitely be one
yeah,
because I've got plenty too.
yeah, 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 yeah. You got news coverage, the whole 9 yards. I made a big mistake, uh, but I slowly rebuilt, and today I am. I own 45 doors today, and of those 45 doors, I have bank financing in one of those. All the rest of them are either seller financed or subject to some sort of seller financing. So the stuff really works. I mean, it's not. This isn't a gimmick. This isn't. Uh, there's no BS. It really does work. So that's my story. That's my story, guys. Thanks for listening. I appreciate
It's a great story too, by the way. But before we get to me, like who the hell is Ken? But before we get to that, I just want to go and talk about Sub Two Empire. Like you are the creator and founder of Sub Two Empire. So can you just talk for a second about why Sub Two Empire? Obviously, Subject to is your favorite acquisition strategy, but why Sub2Empire.com? What's the goal of Sub Two? Because the podcast, Creative Real Estate Investing Mastery Podcast, is powered by Sub Two Empire. Sub2Empire.com being the website. So tell us why Sub2Empire.com. Where did you get that idea and why did you create it?
So I'm just gonna lay it out here. It's there's tons and tons of gurus. There's more gurus out there than, I mean, even in my short tenure here, 10 years in the business, I'm blown away by the gurus out there. But I wanted to do something a little bit different in that I wanted to actually do deals with my students. I when I started this, the idea was not to make a bunch of money off of coaching. I am a real estate guy. I love the challenging side of real estate, and so my goal was, hey, let's do deals with the students. Let's redirect my marketing funds from direct mail and Google Ads and all this stuff, and let's put it into a coaching program that actually teaches people how to do this stuff, and so that they can learn from my experiences and my mistakes, and let's get them to do things the right way, so that I know if I'm going to do a deal with a student, I know it's done the correct way. And so, whether that student might sell me a deal, we might joint venture on a deal, I might be a money partner in that deal, but that is literally why I did it. So today, now we still do direct mail, we still do a lot of marketing, but the primary source of the deals that I do and the deals that I get into come from working with students. And so, there for a little while, we had different pricing structures and all that stuff. And ultimately, where we landed was just a flat, simple fee. Because if you're not spending money on coaching, or if you're not spending money on anything, it becomes less important to you.
Mhm.
And so we charge just enough to kind of pay for our software, our back end systems, and things like that. But still, to this day, the main focus is doing deals with students, and that's it. It's real simple. I don't think there's any. I don't think there's any real arguing that works, and that is the reason why I started and built Sub to Empire. So
The- and, and two, don't gloss over the fact too. You mentioned in there while you're telling that the whole reason for the coaching program so that people do things the right way, right? Cover your assets, be transparent and honest, especially with the sellers. Like which integrity, like integrity has disappeared from a lot of the gurus that you mentioned over the years too, and it's been a sad state of affairs. So
yeah,
one of the
yeah,
reasons, so just to set it back a notch too. Jeff actually created Sub 2 Empire, and then he was kind enough to allow me to come in as a partner about 3 years ago, as well for the Sub 2 Empire because I wanted to like do something different with real estate too, and so we thought the coaching program might be a great place to partner. And so
Well,
hence
the reality,
hence where we are, right? But there's both of
yeah,
us
yeah,
sitting here on a live stream.
yeah. The reality is that people don't teach you stuff about how to run a business. Like all the tactical stuff is, it's like once you learn it, it's fine. You learn it, you never forget it. You might need a little bit of a refresher or something like that. But and I, for the longest time, I resisted having partners in anything. But it's not until you realize that growth requires you to either outsource things or bring people into your lives that can cover the things that you don't understand or the things that you are not good at. And so, like, Ken and I have very, very different personalities. We are extremely different people. But Ken does things that I cannot stand to do, and I'm willing to give up equity for him to do those things. It's that important to me, and so yeah, I mean, it's been we've had our ups and downs, right?
Everything that
For
it's always,
sure.
hey man, being a serial entrepreneur, especially when your primary business is real estate, I mean, it's just that's just the way life is. It's just the way life is. So
Yeah,
you have to get used to that.
yeah. And besides, I'm usually like 99% right on just about everything anyway. So
That's that's right. 99.9 maybe, right? Yes.
no, no. So Ken, I'm my mouth's starting to dry out here. So
Yeah, you need a
why
break.
don't we?
Is it
Yeah,
time
why don't
for a
we
little
talk
bit
about you a
about
little bit?
Ken? All right.
Yeah, yeah.
So, as Jeff mentioned, my name's Ken Rossics. I have, so one of the reasons I was attracted to Sub 2 Empire and the coaching program is I was an educator. Like, I retired from being in education. I actually was in charge of human resources for school districts. Here we are in the St. Louis metropolitan area, or, well, actually across the state of Missouri, but that's where I am now in the St. Louis metropolitan area. And so I've always had this idea in the back, like education was the thing, like my favorite job ever, even though I was working for the man, was being a teacher, right? A classroom teacher. I was a high school math and science teacher, right? And chemistry was my favorite subject to teach. And I was probably the happiest then. And then, of course, I moved into administration and all that too. And the buck certainly stops there, and no good deed goes unpunished in human resources, but that's a different podcast. So that's kind of what interested me to get involved with the coaching side. So let's just talk about maybe a little bit of real estate. I've been doing real estate since 2001. So going on, what is that, 23 years? Carry the one, 23 years, going on, a quarter of a century now. And so I've done a lot of different things in real estate. Jeff mentioned we like to do creative things. I've always been doing creative things, and I just didn't know it at the time, right? But now I know all those things, and so I like to diversify myself. I like to diversify my cash flows. I like to diversify my real estate deals and things like that. So when I started in real estate, it was acquiring properties and their rentals, right? Like the straight model, like being a landlord, all that stuff too. Being a landlord friggin'
Did you
sucks.
love it?
Being a
Did you
landlord
love
friggin'
that?
sucks. I finally figured out after many years how to properly screen the damn people. Like, not that I didn't know you needed to screen them, but like really screening the people and getting them in there so that the straight rentals we still have are not an issue anymore from a tenant perspective. But yes, when you're working full time, so remember, I started real estate when I was still working full time for the man, right? And so I was actually in 2001. I was still a teacher, and then I moved to be a principal at a high school, and then I moved up into human resources along the way. So those jobs are time consuming. So I was doing real estate part time. So the easiest thing to do is just to grab this property and put a tenant in it, grab this property and put a tenant in it to budget my time. So that's what we did when we started. Then we moved into renovations. Like, we've done plenty of flips over the years, a lot of flips over the years. And so that's a whole nother podcast episode, right? Just on fix and flips. Um, but I also started along the way, I also started saying, okay, well, people seem to have a need for private lending, right? Before I even knew what private lending was, right? This is 2004, 2005. And so I was like, okay, I'll loan you money on that, but I have to secure it somehow. So I'm going to put a second deed of trust on your property, right? So I just researched all that at the time, figured out how to do it, and then I kind of just started dabbling in private lending. I say dabbling because that is a surefire way to get burned. And I got burned, right? I got burned. My principal money didn't get paid back on a deal before. Like I've been burned. So along the way, you figure out how to do that better, right? And so that's actually how Jeff and I met. I was a private
I was
lender
gonna
on
say,
one of his deals. The deal he mentioned, that whole separate podcast deal that he mentioned too. So it was
yeah,
interesting.
Ken almost you almost didn't get paid back. Almost didn't get paid back.
I knew you.
Almost.
I knew you'd come through. That's what I like about Jeff, though. He knows comes through. He prioritized me, so like that was great from a perspective of being paid back. But I also knew instantly after I met Jeff that he knew what the hell he was talking about. Like he knew way more about subject to deals and all that because he was doing them, right? I knew what they were and seller finance and all that stuff, but he was actually doing that. So I knew immediately he was the real deal. So another reason why I wanted to come in and partner with Jeff, which he was kind enough to allow me to do. So anyway, so fast forward now, 20 plus years later, real estate has allowed me to retire. I retired out of education when I was 45 years old. I was able to do that because of real estate. I took the profits that we received, that we were getting from, at the time we were doing several fix and flips, from the fix and flips, and I bought in every dollar I could into the retirement system and got the hell out. I got the hell out right before I retired, actually December of 2018, right before COVID hit, right before public education was under scrutiny. Should have probably been under scrutiny before, but that's a whole separate deal. But I got out just in time, even unbeknownst to me. Real estate allowed me to do that, right? I've purchased property on seller financing in 2 different countries. Well, 3 if you count the U.S. But I own property in Costa Rica and I own property in Mexico, right? Seller financed. This is creative stuff, and I'm gonna sell it on seller financing probably, right? When I get ready to do that. So as Jeff mentioned, like we know this works. It works not just in the United States, but in other countries. Like I can show you it works. Like I can show you all the information. Like a lot of gurus, like we can load in our HUD one statements, our settlement statements, right? If you want to see all that from it, it's all good and well. But we know it works, and so that's why we're just trying to, right? In a nutshell, we're just trying to give back, so people don't make the same mistakes we did, right? The only way you get fast tracked with your success is to learn from people that have been there and done that and tell you what not to do as importantly as what to do, right? So hopefully that's what the goal is with our coaching and mentoring, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. You know what? I tried to do this while you were talking because there was a really good point there where when you told everybody that you retired at 45. So I'm just gonna throw this in too.
The applause, nice.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
applause.
Yeah.
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 And another thing too, though, is like I like what you mentioned though, Jeff. It's not just right. We're real estate based, but it's more about that. Like we also want to make sure that you understand how to operate your own business. I did not understand that for the longest time. Well, and especially I was doing it part time, so some of that's on me. But you have to operate it as a business. Okay, I'm going to file with the Secretary of State my LLC, and woohoo, I'm in business. No, you're not. You have a business, but you're not in business until you figure out how to operate your business properly. So that's another thing that I like, and hopefully I can bring is about, because I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've got like 6 different operating LLCs and all different things, real estate being the primary one. But I got health and wellness, I got all that stuff too. So understanding how to do that and bucket the LLCs, right, hopefully is an important thing to understand, especially if you're new to real estate investing.
Man, I've got can I be vulnerable here for a minute?
You can be vulnerable. You're live. Might as well be vulnerable.
Yeah, because yeah, So this is going to sound really silly, but when I first got into this, probably for the first 4 years, I've rehabbed, I don't know, anywhere from 75 to 100 houses at this point. But when I first got in it, I did not realize, I was borrowing money from private lenders. I had some hard money kind of sprinkled in there, and I did not realize that I could pay myself as a general contractor. I would just go months and months without a paycheck,
Yep. Yep.
and I don't know, it just dawned on me one day, like, wait a minute, if I'm paying Joe Schmo to to be the general on on a rehab, why aren't I paying myself to do this? So
Yep.
so from that point on, I really just kind of I started building in some extra funds for paying myself, so I could actually have living expenses and things like that. I would always over borrow, but I never really realized that until much later on, or actually was able to cash in on that a little bit later on. So it was just I don't know, it's just a learning thing. But it goes back to what you're saying, is like, you don't nobody there's really, I mean, you can go to business school, I guess. I guess that would be fine. You'd probably be better off than not going. But I would say that the majority of anything you're going to learn in business, you just have to learn through making tons of mistakes. And I've made some pretty big ones, and honestly, I wouldn't change a thing. I really wouldn't. It's the weirdest thing to. It sounds strange coming from a business owner, but the mistakes are where the gold is at, if you ask me. They're painful when you're going through them, but I dare I say I look forward to the mistakes. I don't know if that's the right, but I mean, it is really, I consider it, because I'm a college dropout. I dropped out of college, and I consider those mistakes my college tuition. I really do, and it's kind of a rite of passage type thing, I guess. The whole idea behind what I'm telling you, really, though, is you can limit that exposure to those mistakes as well, and that's really one of the big goals behind Sub 2 Empire, and what we're going to talk to you about here in just a second. But that is a learning experience, and one I probably wouldn't change. I just don't want to see anybody else go through it. So anyway, I guess let's start wrapping this thing up here.
Yeah. Well, real quick too. So we've been talking about coaching here too. Let's just make sure we say, so if you go to our website, sub2empire.com, and see all that, the links are below or whatever. We have 2 different coaching programs. So if you see that on there, we'll just give you a little. One's called Creative Finance Academy. That's our elite level coaching program. And again, it's just a monthly subscription, as Jeff mentioned. And then we have the Apprentice program, which is really designed as an entry level, right? We actually just launched this recently as an entry level deal, and it's $35 a month. You get a weekly coaching call. We throw in some courses and materials and stuff like that just to kind of get you started. It doesn't mean that you have to be a completely new real estate investor, but it's kind of our entry level deal. So if you're interested in any of that, or you're interested in the guys, like you can see our bat caves behind us a little bit here. If you're interested in like real people doing real deals, go check us out. Right? No pressure.
Absolutely.
It's totally fine. We'll be here. Right? We'll be here all the time. Right, Jeff? The real quick though, before we wrap up, this is just one thing. I was talking about new investors and all that stuff too. If there was one piece of advice that you have received or that you want to give to someone starting in real estate, so someone comes to us today, there's an apprentice program, I don't know what the hell to do, like I'm completely new, where do I start? Like, what's the one piece of advice you would give that person?
Yeah, I mean, short of seeking out and finding a good quality mentor, whether that's us or and a mentor with integrity. Honestly, that's the biggest thing I think I see out there in this space anyway. But I would say start. The biggest thing I think you can do is just start networking with people. Weeding out. There's a big thing that one of my mentors told me one time. Out there in the amongst the wolves, there is a lot of noise. And for those people that have maybe taken an electronics class before, there's something on like an oscilloscope, for example, that there's a difference between signal and noise. Signal being the truth, noise being a bunch of garbage, and it takes a little bit of it takes a little bit of thought and care to filter out that noise and only concentrate on the signal or the truth. And so I would say get out there and start networking. You don't even necessarily have to be, getting properties under contract or anything like that. You're just getting out there and starting to understand the lingo. And I'll give you one more example and then I'll shut up. And that is one of those things, like for me, was when I first got started, I didn't realize when I would go to these RIAs and what have you, people would talk about buying properties as if, how do I want to say that? When I would hear somebody say, I need to buy this property, and that just terrified me. It was just, but it became this mental game where I realized, well, wait a minute, they don't have a business if they don't buy something. So, because in the past, prior to that, I'd always been so nervous about buying anything or putting debt on anything. It terrified me, and then just took a little networking and getting used to the idea that, guess what, if you don't buy something, you do not have a business. You cannot make any money if you don't go out and buy this property. So just a little mental mind shift is what it was. So that's my I know it sounds strange, it sounds odd, but that's how I thought. I was like, oh man, I'm terrified to buy this house. But now I'm, fast forward here 10 years, I am I did the same thing with a buyer's list, by the way. I'll explain that later at some point. But yeah, just get out there, start networking with people. What about you? What would you do?
Well, that's great advice.
What would you offer
Networking
anyway?
and find people who know more than you do, and listen more, talk less around them, right? That would be, yeah, that would be the advice. But I guess mine would be, it kind of goes along with that, is that you have to take some action. Like I used to be the person in the audience, like, and I've spent an obscene, like, I won't say how much, an obscenely large amount of money over the past nearly 25 years on real estate education, no education, personal development, you name it, right? Because it's important to work on yourself. And so I think that is what is an important item, is that you have to understand where you are and figure out where you want to be, right? And then you have to take some action. And that may mean you have to figure out how to spend $35 a month to get in a coaching program, because that's where you are right now. Maybe that's what, one less Starbucks coffee a week, right?
That's about
And
right.
so,
$35 for a Starbucks coffee. That's about right.
well, I said per week. Per week, what is that?
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
like,
yeah,
what? I don't even
yeah.
know. $7 a week or whatever. But
Yeah.
but the investment in yourself is the big thing. Like, I didn't understand it for the longest time. I fought it tooth and nail. It was like, well, I'm going, I'll learn something, whatever. And just like, man, you got to take a step back and think about, okay, how does this fit in? How can I use this and implement it? And not every single thing is going to be for you. Well, that was another lesson that it took me a long time to learn too. It's like, it's okay. You have to find what works for you, right? And so one of the goals that I have in coaching is like, where are you now? Where do you want to go? And how are you going to get there to meet your needs? Not my needs, not Jeff's needs, not your neighbor's needs, your needs. And so I guess that's what I would say too. So to bring that all back, what's my advice? Know where you are today, know where you want to be tomorrow, and take action to get there. That's my advice.
Great advice. Great advice.
And with
All
all
right,
that,
guys.
we'll probably, yeah, we could probably wrap this one up. So there's a little bit about Ken, there's a little bit about Jeff. little bit about Sub 2 Empire and what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. So hopefully you enjoyed that, and we're going to enjoy bringing you these live deals. Again, bear with us. You can see I could already see on the screen that my lighting, because the sun is peeking out. I have windows behind me, you can't see them, but the sun is peeking out, and I keep going shadow light, shadow light. So eventually we'll figure out how to do that, but we'd rather help you than figure out how to put a green screen behind me. So that's just where that's just where
Yeah,
we are.
absolutely. I'm still stuck in this. My wife had surgery. This has been like 2.5, 3 years ago, and I would move my office into a spare bedroom, just so I could be near her while she was recovering. And it's just kind of just stuck, you know. But it is what it is, man. I'm still rocking and rolling, and still doing deals. So
That's
I
right.
guess let's wrap this up.
That's
And
right.
we're guys. By the way, we're trying to do this. We're going to try and do this every single Friday. And right now
Yep.
we're slated for 11 a.m. every single Friday. So put it on your calendars. Um, set it up so you get reminders. Maybe we'll have a mechanism at some point for people to be able to sign up for these and get reminders. Um,
Yep.
but until then, keep your notifications on. If you're watching from YouTube, keep your notifications on and all that good stuff. Subscribe, and YouTube will send you out a notification every time we jump on here. So,
Yep. And
all right,
thank
guys,
you
that's
so
all we
much
got,
for
I think,
joining.
right?
Yep. Thank you so much for joining the Creative Real Estate Investing Mastery Podcast powered by Sub 2 Empire. We'll see you on the next episode.
Appreciate it, guys. Take care.